tide. Because of that, it made it difficult for us to use it as a water source for our working horses in the early years of the city. The city put in some water troughs. On our left in the center of the island is a fancier example. That big bowl on the top is for your horses, and the two smaller cups on the side are for your dogs or your children.
Your children.
Hiding behind the Christmas tree on our right here, we have a portrait of a Venus flytrap. The Venus flytrap only grows naturally within 75 miles of Wilmington. Team here is currently walking down Water Street. Water Street runs the length of our historic warehouse district, so it starts about 8 blocks behind us. There's another 6 blocks in front of us. And this street was originally a dock. That means this brick building on our right is built out over the river. This is a J.W. Brooks building. It is a suspension building. The Cape Fear River flows right underneath. They would sail small ships under this building to load and unload their cargo. Our main exports are going to be pine tar, pine pitch. We also have indigo, cotton, corn, and rice. The reason we needed those small ships for our goods is because Wilmington is considered a shallow water port. So with the river rising and falling 6.5 feet with the tide, there was a lot of sand and sediment out to the mouth of the river, and that formed shoals. Those shoals made it difficult for larger ships to get into our river, and that's actually how we got our name. Early travelers were afraid of running aground on the shoals, so they named it the Cape Fear River. We have that problem all up and down the coast of North Carolina. There are a lot of barrier islands, sandbars, and shoals. They made it a treacherous place for merchant ships. There are hundreds of shipwrecks off the coast. But it made us a great spot for pirates. Those pirates knew these waters like the back of their hand, so those barrier islands gave them a lot of hiding places and escape routes. Our most famous pirate to visit Wilmington was Mr. Edward Teach, also known as Blackbeard. And in 1718, the gentleman pirate, Mr. Steve Bonnet, was captured out in the mouth of the Cape Fear River. In our historic parts of the city, we try to keep things as close to the original as possible. So on our left, you'll see this short brick wall. This wall is 160 years old. And on our right, you'll see a very similar looking brick wall. But this one is only 16 years old. As we make this turn here, on our left on the corner, beside this fire hydrant, you'll see a stone marker. We have those markers throughout our city. They tell us about important people, places, and events. The marker on that corner tells us about the Quince family. Their home once stood there. They were a prominent business family in the area, but the reason we talk about them is they had a very important friend. They knew him as General, but we know him as President George Washington. So whenever President George Washington visited our city, he would stay on that corner with the Quince family. On our right here, this white building, is the Earl of Wilmington City Market. This is the oldest grocery store in Wilmington, and it's actually the oldest grocery store in New Hanover and Brunswick counties. It's a little more than just a grocery store back in the day. It was similar to the open-air markets like they have in Charleston. Lots of small vendors, an apothecary, all sorts of shops inside. Going up on our right, if you look down this alley, you'll see how large that city market is. And you can see an original cobblestone road coming up through the asphalt. The cobblestone roads in our city are about 100 years older than the brick roads, and they were built before the Revolutionary War. To our right, the warehouse district will continue for about another 3 blocks. But on our left, we're going to start our residential district with this brick home. This is the Mitchell Anderson house. This is the oldest house in Wilmington. The Mitchell Anderson house was actually built before our city was established. This house was built in 1738. And we were officially established as Wilmington on February 20th of 1739. Running beside the street on our left here, you'll see this short stone wall. These stones are not natural to our area. Wilmington is built on a big sand hill. We did not have stones like that. Those stones came here from Europe on the hulls of ships. They are ballast stones. So the ship started its journey in Europe. They placed those stones in the hull to weigh it down and keep it balanced. And when they got here, they needed that room for cargo. So they threw those stones overboard, and our locals gathered them up to use them for building supplies.
How cool is that?
Down through these trees on our right, we have Chandler's Wharf, which is a shopping and dining destination. But originally, these were the warehouses of the Chandler. And coming up on the corner, this greenhouse was his home. The Chandler had an important job in our city. This is who you went to before you went out to sea. And you would bring him a list of everything you needed. All of your medicines, groceries, building supplies. It was his job to gather all these items up for you. This next house on our right, this big pink house is the Brown Lord House. This is the 5th oldest house in Wilmington. The Brown Lord House was built in 1775. Coming up on our left, this big white house is Baptist Hill House. On the front of that house, you'll see a gold placard. Our Historic Society uses a placard system to tell us how old the buildings are in the district. This next house on our left, step back from the road a little bit, is the Captain John Harper House. Captain John Harper and his brother grew up in Hanover County, North Carolina, on a dairy farm. But they realized early on they did not want to be dairy farmers. They moved to Wilmington and started working on ships. They worked their way up, eventually purchased a few steamships, and started a ferry business from Wilmington to Southport. One day, Captain John Harper realized there wasn't a great way to get to the beach. It took too long, it was too far away for most people to get to, so he decided to solve that problem. He went out and he bought a beach. He bought a small piece of railroad called a spur line, and he already had his ships from his ferry business. He would hop on his ferry in Wilmington, ran it 17 miles down the river to that railroad. He would take that railroad onto what is known today as Carolina Beach. On our right, you'll see this large stone wall. This wall wraps around an acre of land, which was pretty unusual during the time this home was built. They were trying to fit as many homes in this area as possible. So you already knew this guy was important because he had more land than everybody else. This is the Governor Dudley Mansion. Governor Dudley was our first elected governor of North Carolina. He was elected in 1836. And before that, all of our governors were appointed to us by the King of England. As we pass the front of this home, get a good look at that double staircase. Governor Dudley did a lot of entertaining in his home. That home is over 10,000 square feet, so plenty of room for parties. And the style of the day for the ladies were these big antebellum dresses with the steel hoops underneath. So you can imagine a regular staircase, a lady in one of those big dresses going up, while another lady tried to come down. They get in a bit of a traffic jam. They started putting those double staircases on the front of their homes. And the rule was, You'll go up on the left and come down on the right. You would always have your gentleman escort by your side so that nobody saw your ankles. If somebody saw your ankles, you were considered a very scandalous woman. No shorts in the summer, just long dresses. One of the reasons we have so many historic homes that we can see here in downtown Wilmington is because there were no major battles fought here during either the Revolutionary or the Civil Wars. Our closest battle during the Revolutionary War, the Battle of Moores Creek Bridge, which is north of us outside of Castle Hayne, North Carolina. And our closest Civil War battle was actually the Battle of Fort Fisher, about 20 miles south of us. That was a pretty big one. It's considered the largest naval bombardment of the 19th century. On our left here, you see these two replicas of the original gas lantern. They are lighting the way back to this family's livery stable. Many of these historic homes will have a small building behind them. A lot of those were carriage houses for their personal carriage and horses. A few of those carriage houses might have also been a livery stable, which just means they ran a business out of it, like repairing wagon wheels or leather. Some of those small buildings, unfortunately, were slave quarters, but many of them are going to be outdoor kitchens. We had a lot of kitchen fires in the early years of our city, so wherever possible, people would build a separate outdoor kitchen in the hopes that if it ever caught fire, they would not spread to their home. Way up on our right here, this green home has some of the original stained glass windows on the front. That glass is a type of blown glass called rippled or crowned glass. They blow that glass into a cylinder, then they spin that cylinder really, really fast until it collapses flat. And while it's still hot, they punch out those window panes. The ripples that you see are the natural defects of that glass blowing process. As we turn the corner here on our left, you'll see this beautiful pink house. It has some of the original slate shingles. And as we pass this home on the back, you will see a lattice. That lattice is an original sleeping porch. It gets really hot down here in the summer. So before we had air conditioning, people would simply sleep outside on their porches. If they had enough money, they might put that lattice up to give themselves a little bit of privacy. Our historic district is 230 blocks, and many of the homes inside of it are still private residences today. We have about 16 bed and breakfasts, and a few rental properties like Airbnb, and some homes were converted into businesses later on, but many of them are still private residences. We have a lot of restrictions on what people can do to their historic homes. So on the inside, you can do pretty much whatever you want. The outside has to stay as historically accurate as possible. They have to choose from approved lists of paint colors, materials, and techniques. Even newly built homes in the district have to follow these same standards. They blend right in. You can't tell the difference. You might have noticed that many of these historic homes have porches. We spent a lot of time on the porch back in the day, before we had air conditioning, hoping to catch a breeze. If you look at the ceilings of the porches, like the one on the right here, you'll notice they're painted a light blue. That color is called paint blue. It was believed that spirits could not cross water. They thought by painting the ceiling of their porch blue, it would trick the spirits and they would not cross into the home. This big white house on our right is now a bed and breakfast, but originally this was the home of Mr. Benjamin Beery. He was a prominent businessman, and he owned a shipyard in Wilmington. So at first we thought he built that extra story just to show off how much money he had. We found out later, after reading some of his journals, it was a much more cynical reason. Mr. Beery liked to take his telescope up to the top of his home, but he wasn't looking at the stars. He was looking down at his shipyard and spying on his workers to make sure they were working hard enough. As Pete walks down this street, this is much like people were doing over 100 years ago, going for a Sunday drive. They would look at some of the new architecture for the time, like this Spanish-style home on the right, the Jewett Shepherd House. One of my personal favorites, this beautiful lavender home on the left. This is a great example of Victorian architecture. You might also notice the very narrow driveways. These were originally carriageways, and our carriages and buggies are much narrower than the cars that we have today. If you look between these twin-style homes coming up on the right here, you can see an original cobblestone carriageway as we pass by. On our left is a big white house. Up above the front door, you'll see a small porch. In the back of that porch is a tall window. That window replaces a door that once stood there. When we were a colony, the King of England decided to place a tax on how many doors we had in our home. So wherever possible, on the exterior of our home, instead of a door, we place a tall window that opened up enough for you to walk through. And on the interior, your rooms like a pantry or a closet, we would simply hang a sheet or a curtain. Anything we could do to keep money out of the king's pocket. It's currently walking up Tannery Hill. His new house goes into the city tannery. The tannery once stood in an empty lot in front of that home. It did burn down, and the city chose not to rebuild it. That is where locals would bring their deer, cow, and hides that they had to be turned into leather. That process requires a lot of fresh, clean water. They chose that location because it's the site for an artesian spring. They welled that up and used that water for the leather making process. That spring actually still runs today. It runs under the street and comes out at Chandler's Wharf. On our right here, you'll see these two twin-style houses, the yellow and the blue. They look a little different from the other homes on this street. These two houses were built during the Great Depression. They were purchased for $750 out of the Sears and Roebuck catalog. That was their Craftsman Bungalow series. When you purchased a home out of the Sears and Roebuck catalog, it arrived on the railroad. You had to get it to your home site and then build it yourself, usually with your Sears Craftsman tools. About 70% of those homes are still standing today. That's not too bad a record for a do-it-yourself project. On our left here, this big yellow building is the third oldest USA building in the country. This is where our servicemen and women would go to blow off some steam. They held parties and special events here, even weddings. They had rooms underneath full of cots where people could spend the night. We were named our nation's first World War II heritage city in honor of our contribution during the war effort. We have members of all 5 branches of the military in our city during that time, and civilians working for the North Carolina Shipbuilding Company. We built over 243 smaller ships for the war effort. While we did not build our big battleship that sits in the river, when it came up for salvage, North Carolina school children raised the money to purchase it and put it up as a memorial to our servicemen and women. If you look back a little ways to our right, you'll see a steeple. That steeple is the tallest point in Wilmington. From the top of that steeple, there is a rooster weather vane. His name is Rodney. Rodney is 5.5 feet tall, so he's the same height as me. On our left here we have the Cherry Moore building. This building was originally a Goodyear tire store. Those doors on the front were garage bay doors. And again, they're narrower than what we would have today. This was the time period of Model A, Model T, even your carriages and buggies were getting rubber tires. On our right on the corner here we have the Dram Yard Restaurant. This building was originally the Eureka Dye Company, built in 1915. They processed indigo into inks and dyes. If you look at the sign, you'll see an elephant on the door, even an elephant door handle. That elephant's name is Topsy. Topsy the elephant visited our city as part of a traveling circus, and while she was here, she decided to go on an adventure. So she ran away from the circus. She ran down Dock Street, saw her reflection in the windows at Eureka Dye Company and decided she just had to get inside. So she broke in. She made a huge mess throwing ink and dye everywhere. Her handlers caught up to her and got her out of the building, but Topsy wasn't done yet, so she ran off again. She ran down 2nd Street to where it turns into marshland. And she wasn't stuck, she just didn't want to go home yet. So her handlers went down her favorite tree and finally lured her back to the circus. We found out later on, Topsy's favorite treat was a flask of brandy.
Her favorite drink was black.
On our right here, this white building is now a wedding venue, and originally this was our city's livery stable. It's kind of like our city's first parking garage. When you were coming into town, you were usually staying for a week or more. And this is where you would keep your horses and your carriage. We had staff on site to feed and water your horses. And when you're ready to go home, they would help you hitch up your carriage, and you could pick up any supplies you needed at the Diamond Food Store next door. We look beneath our trolley, you'll see some of our beautiful brick roads. You might notice some names and numbers on some of these bricks. Many of the names are worn off after years of steel forged wheels, even rubber tires. But originally there were 10 companies that contributed bricks to our city. These brick roads went under all 230 blocks of our historic district. So back in the 80s, we got a lot of complaints about how bumpy these roads were. They went through, paved them over with asphalt. Now we're worried that we're losing our history, so we're going back through and removing the asphalt and relaying the brick roads underneath. We're hoping to be about halfway done with that project in 10 years.
Wow, that's so quick.
On our right here we have the Slice of Life Pizzeria. This building was originally the Masonic Hall, built in 1841. This is where the Freemasons would have some of their secret meetings. On our left in the center of the street, you'll see an island. This island skirts the water top from the beginning of the tour and runs the length of Market Street. This is a trolley island. Trolley was like our city's first form of public transportation. It was bigger than what you're riding in today. It would probably weigh about 8,000 pounds altogether. And usually when we have a carriage that big these days, we have 2 horses pulling it. But back then they had 1 horse pull that carriage. It was a smaller horse than Pete. That horse had a much harder job. That horse would pull the trolley around the island. You would hop on, and when you got to your destination, you would pull a string to ring the bell. That told the horse to pull over and let you off. On the corner here on our right, we have what we in Wilmington consider to be our first skyscraper. This building was built in 1911, and it's a whole 9 stories tall. They had a new invention for the time inside of it. They had an elevator. People were afraid to ride that elevator. The owner of the building went to the local pastors. He said, "Will you please tell people that it's safe to ride my elevator?" Well, on Sunday, that pastor did him one better. He said, "If you believe in the Lord, if you have faith, you will ride an elevator that's going." Then Monday morning, he had a line of people around the block waiting to ride his elevator and prove their faith. My name is Spicer. I've got Pete helping me out today. All of your trolley fares and tips go towards taking care of this big guy and rescuing more. So we're glad you're here. Hopefully you had fun walking around our beautiful city with us. If y'all will stay seated while I get Mr. Pete parked and tied up, when we're ready, you can exit off the left side of the carriage.